there's an old Hermetic saying, if all of this stuff is true, why doesn't it work for you? And it's like, the answer is because you don't believe it. It's not part of you. You're still in that duality of here and there. Reality, dream. Even lucid dream, physical reality. Day and night. All of these dualities are taking place. What the Hermeticist tries to do is to hold those two things at exactly the same level all the time. There's, we can identify differences, but that there's the only thing that makes it differentiate is my desire to be in one or the other. But in reality, ultimate reality, there's no difference between the two. We're talking about this book, right? So, and how good we think how good the articulation of these very difficult terms is in this book. At least on first flush, it looks that way, right? So, but here's the thing, right? I'm constantly asking myself these questions, and I'm constantly asking myself, how would I articulate this to people, from a very low level to a very high level, and will it hold water? Will my understanding and my arguments for this hold water to whatever degree? But here's the thing, when other people do that, they're always expecting the information to come from the beyond or whatever, right? And sure, that could, if you're really that tuned in or whatever, there's a possibility. But why does that have to happen if somebody's already produced something like that? And, this just randomly fell into my hands through you. Right. We could say randomly because normally
no,
I'm the one telling you
the
what
weird
books
thing
to
was too was like I was literally like I was spent for the day on my work, and I was just like, I'm just gonna I don't even know. I was pulled up my phone, looked through my YouTube feed to see if there's anything interesting. And there's this guy who's I think he was an Indian guy or whatever, and he's talking about, new thought and creating your own reality and stuff like that. And 9 times out of 10, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm just
there's so much of it out there, you just keep
listen
going.
To something else or whatever.
Right.
I don't usually
Engage
look for more and more of that stuff because whatever. I have a lot of resources for that stuff. So I don't, but for whatever reason, I was just like, okay. Click on it, listen to it. And he starts talking, and I didn't really strongly resonate with what he was saying that much, but I was still just kind of engaged and listening. And I watched almost the whole video, and I normally wouldn't do that. But when he said this guy's name, Vadim Zeland or whatever, I was like, that's weird. Looked it up on Amazon, found the book. Then I was like, oh. Then I found a guy on YouTube reading the book, and I started listening to it, and I was like, wow, this is
good.
This is good.
Yeah.
So, it's just funny how that stuff.
But that's how that,
happen,
this is that, the idea of synchronicity or whatever. But my point is that if you constantly are asking your subconscious those questions of how can I articulate this, how can I make my understanding about this more clear, and so that I can utilize it for myself, and then put it in a way that it will help other people if that's what we're trying to do. So you never know where that information's going to come from.
Yeah.
It's like what what your normal routine would be to normally just bypass that shit, because I got plenty of that. I don't need more people telling me. And then even that's not resonating so much, but why am I still listening to it? Then all of a sudden you get the guy's name and it's like, oh, bleep, and then you go off to, that's weird,
Yeah.
We could say it's random, but it could have been complete bullshit too.
Right.
You could have gotten to and be like, no, this is
even,
bogus.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And even when I start to listen to the book, I still listen to it, like you said, with a, not a cynical but a skeptical attitude. Where
Definitely.
It's I've been listening to the whole book, and the whole time I'm listening to it, I have my ear out for anything that's incongruent or doesn't fit with the things that I've come to understand and that we've talked about and whatever. And but everything was just okay, that's completely in line with everything that I understand at this point, and it's actually presenting it with some nuances that are clarifying rather than confusing. And it's interesting. Oh, okay, wow, yeah, oh, and on and on. So yeah.
Right. And so for me, my process now will be to go through the technical book and go through, the background information and all, the whole book and the pieces that I'm not, if it's confirmation, it's confirmation, but can I rewrite it in a way that is just the points for me to make sure that I understand what he's talking about and can make point A go to point B and so on and so forth. But then, and so in this case, I think I'm going to enjoy this because, like a couple of other authors that I know and have used, once I get through the technical books, right? Like, here's my theory, here's my way to express that, here's my way to engage the process to see if it actually has legs and can produce what I'm saying it will produce, and doing that, and then saying, oh, okay. And then, the last step for me is like something that I normally have to pull from all different places to make it a little bit more concrete is, that's when I go to the novels and say like, oh, here's the dramatic representation of that, the movies that I like, that I've enjoyed over time, or books, right? From Castaneda to Dune to, all of these different ones. I'm like, my mind links to those parts in the book, which are technically fantasy, right? But, the way that I look at that, it's sort of, yes, the event is fantasy, but the way that it's put together and articulated is sort of like a distilled truth. And when it's represented in a drama, it actually has more feeling to it than a technical manual that you're going to use on your own. So it actually brings the expression from, understanding and the application of it. It actually brings that, your expression of that into a much higher level, because now you have this dramatic model. It's sort of like a sacred drama then at that point.
But do you have like specific things that you go back to and you'll like watch like a movie again or something, like, and look,
or even just a scene? Like I have a whole bunch of scenes, that I will go back and just say like, yep, this one. I mean, that's one of the best parts about YouTube, right? You can just grab a specific scene from a movie and just go, save, save in this file, you save. And so I have like, oh, here's all my references for, intoning, boom. And then here's all these scenes in different movies or chapters in different books where it talks about intoning and
the voice,
right,
and
all
speaking things into being. And
correct, yeah. And so I've made all these sort of dramatic territories that distill that into something that has some feeling behind it, rather than just the technical parts, which are kind of dry. And so it's sort of like, that's easier for me to sort of give it a little bit more of a boost than just repeat until it becomes, you get better at it, yes, but at the same time, what's your goal? It's like sometimes it's hard to articulate a specific goal with a specific technique, right? It's like but if I have a dramatic event in mind, even if it's not, a truth, right, in the way that we would think of it, then it makes it easier for me to sort of get behind it and say like, oh yeah, that I can do that. It's like, and so whether I do try to produce it here, or a combination of producing it here and producing it in a lucid dream, or whatever other technique, or combining it with something to produce that effect and seeing if I can get to that place, then it for me, it makes it easier.
Mm-hmm. So like one of the things that I was asking you about earlier, and that he talks about in this book, is the idea of like the difference between like inner and outer intention, right? And so he was saying like, when you have, inner intention is like, this kind of idea of force, right? Or like
the will.
Your will to, make the world conform to your
Right.
desire through like, a strong desire, action, force basically, and outer intention being something that's much more difficult to articulate, but that can be experienced in lucid dreaming, which is like, how do you make something happen in a lucid dream? And can you get so proficient at making what you want occur in a lucid dream that you begin to live more and more like that in physical reality? So like my question to you was like, how when you want something specific to happen in a lucid dream, because you're very good at that, like how do you do that? Like what's the process that you go through? Like what are the feelings? What's the intent? Like how does that work? Because that is what you're talking about, right?
Right.
Approximating being able to do that, living life more and more like that here.
Right. So, and I think to me, everything you said was spot on. It's just that there's a bit of a nuance in that second part. Like how, again, without being mechanistic, how does that, and this has been a question of yours for a long time, and a lot of people, how do you transfer from the lucid dream state to the waking state? How do you get that process?
Well, even
to
for me,
transfer?
like working on lucid dreaming has been an indication of like how I'm approaching energy work on the physical side with that kind of force idea, and the lucid dreaming highlighted my the
Tendency.
my tendency, yeah, not just my, like, more than my tendency, like my pattern, my habit,
Yeah.
like that's my attitude towards everything, is just like it has to be for, and even like in one, you like we talked about one time, a recurring theme in dreaming for me was like these kind of like epic battle scenes, right? And so like, and to me it's kind of like whenever I think about like my dreams or my goals, like I my first response or my initial kind of position stature to take is like, this is an epic battle of like me against the world, like I have to like pull this off and like make this happen. It's like this like epic thing, like, but there's going to be these like difficult, challenging forces that I'm going against, and like, so I'm gonna have to get in there, and like, and so, and in a weird way, it's like, then the reality, then the dream, then the role, then the script is playing out according to my expectations and my attitude towards it. Like it's this perfect like envelope feedback loop of like, oh well, that's the way that's what you're bringing to it. That's the resonance. That's the frequency that you're operating at. And so that's that's how you're going to play that whole thing out. So, but then like going into lucid dreaming, like achieving, once I would become lucid, it was like, okay, that same attitude. Now I'm lucid. Now I gotta grab control and like, and hold that control and like move to this place and like just totally not have any control and wake up. So,
Right.
and so I don't know, the taking on a different, it's almost like, as somebody that's very much like locked into that like way of thinking about it, it's very difficult to conceive of a less forceful way of approaching anything, like whether it's lucid dreaming or being successful in like physical life or whatever. So
Sure. And I mean, sometimes us talking about it, I think it seems, even to me, but definitely to others, that I'm saying both of those things at the same time, because I'm kind of hard about this stuff, It's
Right,
like I'm
right,
not the easygoing
right.
person that, like, oh, it's all good. No, it's not all good. It's like, it's good if you say it's good, but there's a certain amount of effort that needs to be done. But I think it's more what you're talking about is a conditioning that we've had in life here, and that this is the way, we've been so indoctrinated to that, and have expressed it almost unconsciously, that we take it for granted so much. It's sort of like asking the fish, find water. It's like, what's water? It's like, it's the environment that it's in. It swims, it does whatever, but it's like, it doesn't really understand that it's the medium that it's all surrounding all the time. It's life, right? And so it just becomes the way that it does things. And the same thing for us with that, like here we're very entrained to force versus force, right? It's like
me against
physical,
the world, me
against
the situation. I got to
me
get
being
mine.
small and the world being big, and now there's definitely a differentiation between those two things. And so even if you could get to the point of complete understanding, and and understanding doesn't mean belief, because belief isn't just, you don't choose belief, right? Belief comes from consistent results, comes from consistent taking action in whatever way, and having that result, the results that are produced being replicable on a regular basis, right? That produces the belief. It's sort of like, and I always use the children tying shoes when they get to that place, right? It's the same kind of phenomena where, right now you tie your shoes and you think it's a physical act and that there's no disparity there, right? That you're against the shoelace or whatever it is, but you have no, if you still have tying shoes, right? You need to go to the store. You just put your shoes on and you go to the store. You don't think about tying your shoes. There's no question in your mind that you're not going to be able to tie your shoes, that there's any question about tying your shoes, right? But when you were a little kid, it was like, oh, I'm gonna have to tie my shoes. My dad wants me to tie my shoes by myself. It's like, okay, make the bunny ears, and then the bunny goes through the hole, and it looks perfect, and then it falls apart on the first step, and the dad goes, oh, let me do that because we gotta get out of here, or whatever. And it's like, so there's a certain amount of learned, not just learned helplessness that you're going to do that, but you have to do it many times to produce the same result, to get to a place where you believe you can tie your shoes.
So the effort that you're talking about, that you constantly refer to, is not an effort of like force in the execution, but in a
it may culminate in that, but it's also repetition
of the exercises,
right,
and the discipline to do so.
Right, which is more of a mental construct that you're stepping into, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, and it's one that can be, people don't want to go there spiritually, but it's the same. My premise is always that the same rules that apply to business, that apply to relationships, that apply to your health, is the same exact rules that apply to spirituality as well. Right? You can look at it with a set of metrics that you design yourself or you adopt from somebody else and say, like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to get to this stage, and if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do these things, and it's going to bring me to this stage within a certain parameter of time, depending on how much ability I have and how much effort I put into it, and it's reproducible. And you see that there's a constant, maybe not constant, it's probably not the best way, but there's an up and down of it, but that you're progressing forward, you're getting better and better at it, and it's taking you less time, and it's becoming your belief system. So that if somebody says you can relax your body to the point of profound relaxation where your senses are offline and your mind is awake and aware, but your body and senses are completely offline, everything is internal instead of external, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that, when we are talking about this and that idea of the, internal intention as opposed to external intention, and how those two things are sort of, how in the lucid dream, what is it in the lucid dream that makes you, sort of transition to, being able to bring closer to the ability of being in a lucid dream and having your exterior environment, physical environment, sort of be in that same place,
Be like a lucid
be
dream.
like a lucid dream.
And what is your like process for like how do you actually manifest something in a lucid dream? I mean,
I for me, it's gone through a number of stages, but I think that the way that I do it now is that I just I expect it to happen. You know, I'm not even expecting it to happen. It's happening. It's happening all the time,
but that's not even. Yeah.
And I'm just casually moving into it because I want to. It's sort of like I have the urge to go to the bathroom. I go to the bathroom. I find the bathroom. It's not like a question in my head other than like, where's the bathroom if I'm in a foreign place and I don't know where I am, you know, but it's not like, do I want to, you know, there's like that questioning part of it is not
and
there
you have
anymore.
you have no, is this going to happen? Is this not going to happen?
No, there's no
you
question
have no
for me
like,
at this
I'd
point.
really like to be able to do that. I'm really trying to make this happen. And you just go, you just kind of,
So sometimes I'll question myself in the lucid dream, right? Like, which I do here as well. I question my, you know, but I'm in my subconscious, so I'm speaking it out, right? Is
in the dream.
In the dream,
yeah.
Right, and saying, you know, what's it like to be walking on the moon or whatever it is?
You say that out loud.
I say that out loud, and you know, the response will come back. But usually, what happens is I'm walking on the moon. You know, so it's all about the experience because that's what it's really about, right? It's like I can have it explained to me or whatever, but it's not. It's about the experience myself. Like, what is my experience walking on the moon? Not, you know, what was it like for somebody else, or what was it like, you know, I mean, you could do that, but it's a whole different, you know, question than what I just asked.
Right.
So in order for me to really understand that, it's like I'm placing myself in the middle of that experience. And just by asking for it, you know, I'm there and I'm really expecting that. And there's, you know, you could have a slower transition or a faster transition. Usually now it's just sort of instantaneous. You know, it's like my next step is that I'm actually walking across the moon, you know, or whatever it would be. So, but I think and I think that's really what we're talking about between the interior and the exterior intention. Is
or
that
inner and outer.
Inner and outer,
as he refers to it in the Transfurfing
So,
book.
you know, there's an old Hermetic saying, you know, if all of this stuff is true, why doesn't it work for you? And it's like, the answer is because you don't believe it. It's not part of you. You know, you're still in that duality of here and there. You know, reality, dream. You know, even lucid dream, physical reality. You know, day and night. All of these dualities are taking place. What the Hermeticist tries to do is to hold those two things at exactly the same level all the time. There's, you know, we can identify differences, but that there's the only thing that makes it differentiate is my desire to be in one or the other, you know. But in reality, ultimate reality, there's no difference between the two. It's just a choice, you know, which one I'm going to experience at that time.
So do you do that during the day then? Are you?
I try to.
I mean, asking your subconscious those questions, like so if you have the desire to make a situation turn out a specific way in physical reality, you use the same technique that you would in a lucid dream.
And I think that's the key.
Which is what? You literally say, like, what would it be like if this situation...
Not even if, like, what is it like
for this situation to turn out
like this,
to work effortlessly, or to produce
yeah.
this result that I'm looking for, or
yeah. what is it like for me to experience whatever, this patient completely healed and laughing and joking with me, like, how'd you do that, or what did you do? I feel great.
And at the same time, you're letting go of the, like, in that moment where you ask that question, you've learned to do it with a certain kind of lightheartedness, right?
That's the childlike effort.
You're
right?
but you're not like attached to like, oh wow, like I really need to like heal this patient and like, oh man, like I'm gonna feel really bad if I don't, and like and you know, and
This is their last chance.
and
It's like the
and
bigger
like,
that you make it, this sort of life or death scenario, which we do with a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
The bigger that we do that, the more resistance you're putting up to, the event that you want to experience.
yeah.
You're making the barrier longer, thicker, higher. You know what I mean? It's
So like our biggest barrier is like all of our emotional like angst around the things that we want and feel like we need and feel like we don't have and feel like our lives would be better with, and our all the problems that we have. It's literally like the emotional attachment that we like put on the intensity with which we treat every situation is like one of the major things that's like literally holding it in place.
Probably the major thing that's holding it in place. That's the glue that's holding it all together. And so of course also combined with everybody else's glue that's holding it together, because it's a consensual reality.
Especially
right?
when like you're harping on aspects of your life, especially when you're like externalizing the reason why certain situations are the way that they are, right? So like when you're saying like, oh, like it's the fucking government's fault that like this situation is this way, then you're feeding that whole mass of energy that's fixing the emotional mass that's like holding that thing in place, instead of like removing yourself emotionally from it and distancing. You're saying like, I'm completely responsible for my experience, and my emotional attachment to each situation is what keeps me fixed in that place. And if I could just let all that go and just simply ask myself, like you're saying, what is it like to be in a place where that doesn't exist, or what is it like to be in a position where I'm completely fulfilled or really happy, or what's it like for this situation to turn out this way, or whatever. And to be flexible enough mentally and emotionally to entertain those ideas instead of being driven to focus on, like, because it's strange,
right.
like
it's hard, because it's we hear all these little which are, again, it's that dichotomy for me of like, okay, do I disagree with this, with some of the like affirmations and things like that, like just let it go, or it is what it is, or any of these things, right? It's like I don't disagree with it on that level. I disagree that most people don't understand the underpinnings of what that is. Like, yeah, you can just let it go, but we know in practicality how hard it is to let something go. You have it ruminating in your head.
Yeah.
You can't help but worry about it, right? Because it's important to you.
Right.
If it wasn't important to you, then there would be no worry about it, right? It's like, am I going to find cake when I get home? Well, I could always stop and get cake someplace, or there's these other options that pop up. But if I go home and there's no cake, it doesn't matter, right? Or it could matter a lot and could ruin your evening.
Right.
Right?
Right.
For some people it could.
Sure.
Seriously,
Yeah.
or put in whatever you want instead of cake, right?
Right.
But it's like, if that's, if it's sort of like, it's like, I wonder what it would be like to have cake when I get home.
God, just even the thought of like treating things that lightly is like, on the one hand, it like makes me laugh. On the other hand, it makes me feel like crying, because like it would be so nice to feel the freedom to really truly embody that level of like lightheartedness and freedom around like what could happen in the next moment, or how things could transition in the next moment in different areas of my life. So it's like
and there's the caveat, right? Is that the reason that I harp so much on lucid dreaming is because you can do that over and over again in that state, where it becomes so common. It becomes your new paradigm. And so it's not the mechanism that we're trying to explain, like somehow magically that starts happening here in the waking reality, right? Physical reality. It's that in doing it so often, when you come here, you start expressing yourself and entering the world in a way that's very similar to that. That becomes more than this training has become for you. That idea of, can I be lighthearted about all this and not really care either way, and just say, basically like, what would it have been like if I, went there and did this, It's sort of like, in lucid dreaming, it'd be like, oh, what would it be like if I had, I don't know, pick your, what if my cohort in crime was John Cleese, it's like, and it was, fantastically funny, and he just had all the best quips for everything that we encountered, and would it get me through this in a better way?
Who's that?
John Cleese, he's one of the guys from Monty Python. One of the main character actors, for that. And but it could be, fill in your favorite persona of somebody, right? Knowing that it's an aspect of me, it's not really him, but that from all of my watching of his things and sort of getting the flavor of his humor, and also being able to access, now we're getting a little deeper, access the, collective of all of his information, and having that, construct, interact with me and my world that I've created in that way would be friggin' hilarious, right? And so, I mean, to me, it would be absolutely hilarious, right? Somebody else might want to have, Raquel Welch or whatever hanging out by their side, whatever it is. And so, but the idea is that the more that happens in the lucid dream state, the more I can, it becomes, maybe at first it's more forced. I have to think about it here, but like, if that really, it's easy to gauge, right? If that really is the crux of it, I have to have some experience doing that in a place where the results are very apparent right away.
Right, instantly.
Yeah. So, or at least it blooms into that, right? And I can go, wow, okay, and it's not like, I don't want to be and I don't want to be Mr. Spock, right? Where I'm completely emotionally detached from everything. I still want to enjoy it, right? I mean, that's the whole thing, but it's sort of like the getting to it it's a given. It's not something that I'm emotionally engaged in to make it happen.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't mean that I don't have effort here, right? It's those things are not mutually exclusive, right? It's not like, carefree and haphazard and blah, 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 and I don't care and I don't do, and I'm just waiting for things to happen to me here. It's like I still, do my best.
But honestly, like, that's one of the things, like, from the beginning of us, like, working together, like, that I've always, I think, been drawn to, in the sense that, like,
and pissed off by.
And pissed, honestly, like, in some ways, it's because it's like, it's fucking frustrating from the outside, because like, so obviously, like, if you're, whatever, being mentored by somebody, or working with somebody, or learning from somebody, or whatever, it's like, you're obviously doing it because you're like, oh, I would like to be like that person in these ways. Like, they demonstrate qualities and speak about their experience, or demonstrate that their experience is such and such a way. And it's like, I want to entrain to that. I want to learn how they did that and be more like that. And like, one of the things that, like, that stands out to me and always has is like, it's like, and that I've come to understand, more closely from, like, working together with you on 2BSilent, is like, regardless of what stage we've been at with the project, you've always treated it the same way. And I've always treated it my way, which is like, we're gonna make this, like, we're gonna, okay, next step, now we're gonna like get to the narrative, and like, and oh, this part's really frustrating, or this part's really hard, and like, and like, it's like, and like, so it's like doubly like frustrating, because it's like, how are you, like, because I know that, like, you have, like, like, at each stage, the challenges that we've experienced, like, building and creating 2BSilent, is like, like you've had your version of challenges and I've had my version of challenges,
Yep.
but it's like you always are able to like maintain that same attitude of like, regardless of like what's going on or like how like crazy things seem or like how challenging things seem, it's always just like, yeah,
Here we go.
here we go, whatever, like we're moving toward the goal, it's fine, whatever, no problem, like, oh, this is interesting, oh, what's gonna happen now? It's like, it's always very like joyful, and you're able to like, and like, again, like you said, like I always come to things like with that like kind of like, okay, but like you always dissipate that so quickly, whether it's on one of the live calls or when I'm talking to you in person. It's like you joke around with me like right away from the beginning. I'm like, God damn it, Brian. He's so lighthearted about everything. How does he do that?
Stop making me feel good. I want to feel bad, damn it.
Yeah, like exactly. Like but then I'm self-reflective enough to be like, I don't actually want to feel bad. Like I hate that I feel bad, but I can feel the part of myself that's attached to feeling bad or angsty or like aggressive or like whatever.
Because it's
like,
what we know. It's the majority of
as
what
if
we
that
know.
was gonna make things different or move.
Correct. Because that's what we've been told. That's what we've been
conditioned
not taught,
to.
but told. That if you just apply yourself more, if you're up to the challenge, if you do this, if you do, if whatever, if you, put more force on it until your force overwhelms the force that's resisting you, then.
And my attitude is like, I can go longer, I can do more, I can work until I'm exhausted, and then I collapse, and then I'm like, whatever.
It's like,
yeah, exactly.
It's like, no,
it's not good.
That's it. You see, so I'm not denying that the the people that say like it's not the destination, it's the journey. It's like, but the destination, in some ways, influences the journey, right? And so depending on what your destination is, it sort of sets up these, almost like the journey becomes a decision tree. Like, here's all these options and you pick one, and then it's sort of like all these other ones collapse. It's quantum physics, right? It's like, so once I put my focus on one part of the journey and experience it in whatever way to the fullest of my ability without it's that weird dichotomy again, right? Like fully engaging that part of the journey, but already in my mind knowing that I'm always going to get to the destination. It's not a question.
Right, like
it's not a question. And so it's holding those two things at the same place. I mean, that's where, the techniques and practices come in, right? Because that's the place where you practice those little bits of that and get it down so that you're able to hold those things at the same time, and so you can fully enjoy or be terrified or whatever, fully engaged in whatever part of the journey you're in, but at the same time knowing that, well, I'm going to get to the destination, so it's not really. But
that's the thing that I think people don't have, is that,
it's
and
tough.
That's the thing that produces the angst, is like, will I get there? If I don't get there, that means I suck, or I failed, or like I fell down on, my dreams. I'm not the person that I thought I could have been or could have become, or I wish that I had fulfilled that, or or I'm unhappy in this situation. I would be happy there if I could just get to that thing. And
one of my things is always telling people, look, one of the underlying things that can sabotage anybody's process, right, or achieving a goal, is thinking that the goal that they want is the last goal that they'll ever want. I think this is a huge mistake and a huge barrier that comes up for people, in a weird way. It's very sort of under the currents, it's because they want to be focused totally on that. But just the idea that, it's sort of like that idea, if I could just be here, everything else would be okay. If I could just have this much money, everything would be okay. If I could just have this relationship, everything else would fall into place. You know, and I think that that's a completely that's a complete falsehood, right? That we have those places, those destinations are sort of respites, right? It's like going to a party, and then you go to a party, and then you got to clean up after the party, and then you're thinking, when's the next party going to be, right? And so it's like, it's never like, oh, that was the last party I'll ever have, and I wish I could just stay there forever. And now there's more angst and more like trying to you're grasping, right? Trying to hold it in place. Like, this is the best moment of my life. You know, it's like, look, you know, I mean, I could be really crude here, but I won't. But the idea is that, you know, like trying to grasp for those things, you know, hold things, it's already going against the flow of the universe, right? Everything moves, everything changes, everything moves. So I can either, you know, struggle and flounder in that flow, and it's going to push me where it wants to push me, or I can learn to swim and maneuver in that flow and guide, you know, and feel the currents and all of that and guide myself where I want to go. Miss the big rocks, you know, those kinds of things, right? And so find the eddies where I can take a rest, get a breather. Okay, now I'm going to get back in the flow again, right? I can't just miraculously pull myself out of that place, right? So even if people, you know, take anybody's highest aspiration, you know, I don't care what it is, you know, they want to live forever, they want to, you know, become this, that, you know, all powerful, or, you know, financial billionaire, whatever, you know, that's not the end, you know, that's, and if they treat it as though it were the end, it moves it farther away.
Why?
Because it's not congruent with the way the whole structure is set up. Everything moves. Everything moves. And even if you had every, you know, my thing is that even if you've had every single experience that the being human has to offer on this earth, that there are infinite number of human or beyond human experiences that you could experience somewhere else. You know, so once you're done with here, it's not like, oh, I get to go rest on a cloud now. You know, it's like, no, you're going to have another experience that you're, you know, that's going to open up for you that we can't even conceive of in this form here.
Yeah.
You know, whatever that is. I'm not saying it's, you know, and it's probably, there's an infinite number of those things, you know, paths that people could take.
How do you think that you, man, that light's so beautiful out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice, huh?
But the fall color on the golden leaves, crazy. But do you think, I mean, for me, it's kind of like, how did you get to the place where you really feel that? Because like, I just feel so conditioned to that like my habitual thought pattern just keeps coming back to those subtly invasive emotional attachments to future states that I project to be ends, like perfect situations or achieving this goal, becoming this person, having these things, having things be this way, you know, like, you know, whatever. And it's like, it's so, I don't know if that's just me or if other people feel like that as well. I mean, I'm sure
I think everybody feels that way. And I think it's a matter of perspective, the way that you as an artist thinks about perspective, right? Like I didn't really get that until you were showing me, it was just some kind of arbitrary thing where you were showing me like, oh, this lens on the camera can like if the foreground is fuzzy, then the back part can be clear, and vice versa. And like you can find the right balance where it's like it gives the perception of something different depending on where the focal length is and the perception of the person, right? So, and I think that, that's the case with this stuff too. It's we can use other people's experience as a sort of a guideline, but it won't be our exact experience because we're fingerprints, right? We're all in different places, not better or worse, just different. And so, and my thing has always been, whatever scenario comes up, A, I'm going to do my best, whatever that entails, and B, I'm going to swim in this environment. I'm going to try to become fluent in this environment, in this situation, in every situation, whether it seems negative from the outside, even negative to me, right? It's like, how do I then, can I become more and more adaptable so that, no matter what situation I'm in, I can turn it into something, I can enjoy it and turn it into something that I want.
Yeah, and you engage things like that. Like I just said, knowing you like socially, going to a friend's house, or you're going to go for dinner, or you're going to play with your band or whatever.
Right.
Like you just like walk around with this like,
Here comes more fun.
Exactly. Like it's like, motherfucker, like, how does he do that? Like it's just always, it's never just like, because I know a lot of people feel like,
rose glasses either. It's like, there are some things that I don't like,
yeah,
but
sure.
I engage them the same way. Like if I, like when I'm doing the edits for stuff or whatever, right? It's like, I'll go in there, it's like,
you have to edit text.
Text.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy it. It's tedious for me, but at the same time, I'm like, if I do this well, I'm going to learn how to articulate this in a better way so that somebody somewhere will understand it in the way that I mean it, so that it will help them in their life, So, and so that makes me happy. And so it's like, even though I'm not thrilled with the prospect of doing that, or even the doing of it, it's like my end result that I'm constantly putting out there is that this will really solidify my understanding of this process or whatever I'm doing, and the methods that I'm trying to teach people, and that will give me better articulation, which even if it touches one person, that's enough. I'm hoping that it does more, but if it even touches one person and propels them into this, into the scenario, or gives them the idea that it's even possible that they're revved up enough to engage it and try to suss it out on their own, then it's worth it. So it's like that, I'm in that place, like thinking, sort of like that's, and I've had this, not to the extent that Jordan Peterson has, but that people have come to me and said, like, man, when you explained it in this way, I knew that, but I didn't have the words to formulate it, and really get it down. But it just makes so much sense to me now, and I'm like, oh, great, that's awesome, dude. You're on the path, it's like, that's good, so now I'll apply it and see, what opens up for you in this world. I mean, that's really, it's an unfolding, right? That's the idea. It's like all these little nuggets of experience are out there. We just need to, we tap on them like a touch screen, and we let them unfold, and then we step into them and say like, oh, well, how can I play here? How can I, what am I going to get out of this? What do I want out of this? It's like, and being able to maneuver in that in a competent way, and maybe even hopefully in a fluid way, lets me experience more and more of it. So I'm getting more of the essence and totality of it, rather than just like, a sort of distant observation of it. And it's not just a theoretical construct, right? I want to be able to engage it. And so for me, engaging that river is learning how to swim. And all the techniques are aspects of learning how to swim, because when we break it down, it's a complex process, right? I mean, I mean, how do you lift your arm? How do you do this? How do you do that? Is it the same swimming in calm seas as it is in rough seas? Is it the same? All of those things. There's all these variations, and sometimes variations that you would never comprehend until it happens to you. And so, do you have enough experience to not panic in those moments? All of those things are important. And so, it's an exploration of yourself as much as it is an exploration of other. It's like, I believe that there's a direct relationship between knowing yourself truly and what you're allowed to explore in a good way.
What do you mean?
Other.
Like, what do you mean by explore in a good way of other?
Well, like a lucid dream scenario, right? Like most people's lucid dream is, oh my God, I'm lucid, boom.
Back in bed.
Yeah, back in bed. Or, like maybe they've had several lucid dreams and they're able to, get out and do things or whatever, but the first time something, unusual, more than flying or whatever, let's say they see it in a negative aspect, boom, back in bed. And then maybe it's like, I don't know if I want that experience again. It's like, it's not about like, wow, okay. And like, what do you want, dude? It's like, if it's something negative, it's sort of like,
oh, you mean like
what am I supposed to
encountering
learn
like a
about
demon
this?
or something in a dream or something scary or
Something
whatever.
scary or whatever,
Can you
nightmare,
can you?
past event that you're going to relive or whatever it is that was.
So you're
negative for
saying
you.
like you could respond to it as like what you just did, like, oh, how you doing?
Yeah.
What's up?
Dude, what's up?
Hi-
Yeah. What are you here for? What do you got to tell me? Spill it.
So ridiculous. So okay, so like, it's ridiculous to conceive of actually having the self-control to be able, the self-possession to be able to act that way in
But
that
that's why
circumstance.
little by little by little, I've had
So-
plenty of times where it was not that. It was the first part where it was like, and boom, back in bed. Oh, thank God.
So but what you said before, I want to understand what you mean. You said like when what did you say? Like the degree to which you understand or know yourself.
The degree to which you know yourself opens up the degree to which you can explore more of that infinite potential.
So you think that as you engage energy work, like through, through either trying to produce something in your life that you want to change in your environment, or through lucid dreaming or some of the other things that
Combination
you
of all of those
teach
things.
or
Right.
work with
Yeah,
or whatever,
yeah,
you think all of those things are like ways in which we like they reveal ourselves, they reveal us to ourselves, or we come to like
we uncover those aspects of ourselves that are, that all of the things that you're doing, help you. Because here's the thing, right? It's like, whenever you do any practice, it's not many people that actually observe themselves within the practice, right? It's like, here's the practice and I just go through the routine and I'm putting my focus on either the phenomena of the practice, whatever that brings up, or the goal of the practice or whatever that brings up. But even within that goal, how am I responding to that practice? My ego, myself, right? My little self that's here all the time, that's the conscious mind, how is it responding? Is it like, or is it like, really, looking for that phenomena, or is it, all of those aspects, right? It's like, when you start realizing that, then you have some clues of how to, either dissipate that stuff or build it up. If you're sort of a milquetoast person, you might want to build up that aspect of excitement when what is it about this practice that's driving my excitement that I really want to do this, or what is it about myself that's really, have an aversion to this practice? Is it because I'm sitting in complete darkness and, I can intellectualize that nothing's going to happen, but at the same time, when I'm in there, I can't help but feel this overwhelming sense of dread while I'm, even getting ready to do this. And will it cause me to not do that? Or, all of those things. It's like, it gives us clues of ourselves and things that aren't always apparent when we just walk through our normal day, right? It becomes so like on autopilot. That's part of the mindfulness, or being present and all of that stuff, right? But actually understanding those aspects about ourselves, understanding our tendencies, right, toward everything in our world and how we engage our world. There are certain things that piss us off, and there are certain things that make us happy just because, right? We don't even know why, they just do. And certain things we like and dislike, and that's all part of the duality of this place, right? We have preferences. And why do we have preferences? What makes one thing more than another? And these are all self-explorations that come out through the practices of any kind of energy work or spiritual work, right? There's the, there's the practice, there's the goal of the practice, but one of the hidden goals of all practices is to know yourself better. Tendencies, the proclivity that you have, coming into this world, and what you've, built up over time. This is who I am, right? I mean, that's hence one of the best exercises that as Hermeticists and others do as well, right? Is the deconstruction practice, right? I have a body, but I'm not my body. I have a name, but I'm not my name. I have, a mind, but I'm not my mind. I am. So all of these things, I have emotions, but I'm not emotion. I'm not these emotions. And so it's deconstructing and layering all these things off and saying, because when you get to the core of it, who are you? At its core, what is your authentic self? And so, these practices bring you closer and closer and closer to that, step by step. And the more that you know that, it's almost like learning more strokes for swimming, right? It's like, as I do that, I understand my tendencies, and I know my strengths and my weaknesses, and I'm building up my weaknesses, but I'm balancing all of those things out. I know my tendencies to run at this point, or to,
Right.
to do this and do that. And what would be my experience if I didn't do that, if I did the opposite, or I did this, or, what I'm saying? So it's like, it opens up these new experiences for me within the context of even the same scenario. And,
No, it's all good.
yeah. And so that's, when I look at those things and I engage them in that way, you're getting more out of each thing than just the end result that you were trying to achieve with the practice itself. So, and it affords you, the ability that if you do have some practice like lucid dreaming, when you go there, you're going to test those out, right? Because in a way, to us, there, I have less on the line than here. There, if I mess it up, I wake up, I'm in bed. Okay, I ruined a chance, or whatever. I didn't go where I wanted to go, or I didn't do what I wanted to do. I didn't engage it experience it in the way that I wanted to experience. Well, I got another chance to try it. If you do it here, there's the tendency to think that, oh, I really messed that up. Now I'm out of a job, or whatever, or now I'm going to jail, right? So something really life or death kind of tragic life experience can happen if you F it up here. And so it's a way to sort of experience it there, to see what's going on, and then to check it out slowly here, right? How much of that can I transition here? And, to the point, in incremental steps, to the point where my experience has been that the practice of being in the lucid dream space in small increments, that happens here, so that some of the things that most people would call synchronicity, my understanding is because I'm in that mode of mind that things just fall into place. And I don't think of it as synchronicity anymore. I think of that as, oh, that's one more time when I used that technique here in the physical reality and it worked out, how much more, what would it be like if that was happening 20% of my day or 50% of my day or 100% of my day? So, and what's the experience like? And can I maneuver through that? Because I mean, as much as we'd like to think that, it's like,
Think what?
That you could just imagine something and it would happen for you.
Mm-hmm.
Think how disorienting that would be. Most people would freak out, and they think they intellectualize in their head that they'd be good with that.
Right. Do you think that that's part of why we actually like have to train to lucid dream?
Mm-hmm.
Because like that's part of the reason why the conscious mind is offline during dreaming for the most part, is because because when we're dreaming, we're in that situation.
Correct.
And so it's much more comfortable if the conscious rational mind is offline while that's happening, because
or it's just engaging it in a way
mind
that seems like it just makes it all okay, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's sort of the same reasoning that we say, like, unusual things happen to people all the time, but they're rational. Their conscious mind, gives them a common excuse. Oh, that was just a shadow.
Right.
It's like, oh, I was just imagining that in my eye, or
Right,
whatever.
right.
It's way more convenient to not shake the paradigm that way than it would be to say, like, oh, geez, what the hell was that? It's like that questioning mode is like, can take you down the rabbit hole really quickly, right?
Right.
And so, so I think the conscious mind does that, and it's the reason that the conscious mind, if you're not lucid, but just in a regular dream, it makes everything seem like, this is the normal way. My steering wheel just turned into a big flower, and I'm just going to use the pedals to drive it, and no big deal. And it's not a dream; it's real. So it just sort of, you get in there and you go with it. In a way, it is the natural. It's what I'm talking about, but just not in a directed mode, right? You take it for granted that that's the way it's supposed to be, and so it's just that. In a lucid dream, you get to pick the scenario and move into it in a way that's you can explore and enjoy, and and just whatever you can think of can happen, right? And then, but also some elements of it that are, it's not like I'm moving into a picture where every aspect of the picture is known to me. So it's like that becomes boring after a while, right? You need things to interact and flow in a way that you can have some novelty there, have some, certain experiences, right? I mean, otherwise it just becomes, what's the point? It's like a video game that you've played a million times and you know every route and,
Right.
even the places that don't go anywhere, you know them. And so it's kind of like you lose interest, right? And everybody has a certain tolerance for that. Some people have a very low tolerance for that. They want to get in there and just have this very sort of white bread experience in the beginning, just to kind of get in and do it and be okay and safe and feel good. And, these are the people that need more control than more novelty, right? But as time goes on, that expresses itself more and more and more until you're comfortable swimming. I mean, there's no difference swimming in 3 feet of water than 30 feet of water. It's the idea in your head that you're not touching the bottom in 3 feet of water either. You're swimming on the surface or just under the surface. Well, there's no difference if you're not touching the bottom between 30 and 3. Just the idea in your head is different, right? And one can induce panic, and the other one, is like the panic is touch the ground and see where I am. But engaging those things in that way, I mean, I think this is the same type of thing, right? It's like it's incremental, and that's the way it's supposed to be, because the other way would totally freak us out.
So hence the need for practice.
Hence the need for practice, because if what I said is true, that your experiences open up to the level that you know yourself, well, then practice is engaged knowing yourself, right? So the more that I know myself, the better off I am.
And expand the realm of experiences that you put yourself in to come to understand yourself more clearly.
Right.
Whether it's through meditation or meditative practice or
whatever.
Right.
And of course,
or
then
whatever.
does your spiritual practice, meditative practice, whatever, does that energetic practice actually, how does that translate into my physical reality as well, right? How do I then bring myself, how do I carry that resonance of me being in that place and being good, comfortable and confident and all of those things, and then moving that experience, that resonance into my normal physical world as well, right? How does bringing that into that and carrying it with me, how does that change the environment that I'm working in every day or engaging in every day, right? Not just at work, but at home and with my friends and playing music and doing all those things, right? So it's like, can I, take that and consciously bring that with me and engage in, what does it do? I know it changes it. How does it change it? Does it change it for the positive, or does it show me places where I still need some work? That's not bad either. It's like I may engage it in that way and then everything falls flat and I go, oh, obviously I missed a step. I wasn't good enough to maneuver in a clear way through that. So I just pissed somebody off, right? So if that wasn't my intention, then obviously I had the wrong expectations that my resonance would just get me through the, and I'd go in for my raise and they'd be like, yeah, no problem. We'll give you double what you asked for. It's like, if it was like, actually, here's your green slip, and it's like, see you later. Yeah. So, so it's like, so I got to go back, maybe not completely to the drawing board, but I got to go back and work those things out and hopefully smaller increments so that I don't make those big mistakes here, And also, even if those happen, that's the whole idea of like this too will change, right? So change is the only constant. Everything's changing all the time. You're in one scenario, it may suck, but, continuing to do the practice, continuing to understand yourself more and applying yourself in a way that, you're swimming through this environment and, but always knowing that you're going to get to the goal that you've set for yourself, but it's also not just putting all your hopes and prospects in that and trying to use more force and like, I'm only thinking of the end result. And, because that just sets up more and more and more energetic barrier to you getting to it, right? Because the more I say, here's my end result and here's me, and I want to get to that, it means there's a separation there. And the more I pour into that makes this longer, bigger, higher, thicker. Yeah, the barrier between it, right? The energetic barrier, because it's like I'm sending everything into that place, and it's more like, I'm going to get there anyway. What can I do along the way? Here's this situation. Let me go through this and be okay with it and experience it to the best that I can. Do my best, right? It's not rose-colored glasses. It's not like, it's not even happy-go-lucky the way that I think of that term. It's like, it's definitely more of a, like, I'm doing my best, but in some ways I don't have, the only vested interest I have is that that the longer that I can sustain that idea that things will work out, then every event gives me more practice at that.